Good evening. Welcome to the Wyndham-Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. We are in the Raymond Broadcast Modular. It is May 15th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. Mr. Prince?
Kate Bricks.
Here.
Eric Colby.
Present.
Janie Cummins.
Here.
Don Dillon. Marge Cavoni.
Here.
Pete Hensler.
Here.
Anna Kenny.
Here.
Kate LeVavy.
Here.
And Scott McLean.
Here.
Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Mr. Prince, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
This time.
I think isn't there an adjustment? Is there?
I think it's all been adjusted.
Okay, all right.
Yes,
All
the-
right, sorry.
No, there was one adjustment to the agenda, and the copy that's in the board packet under appointments is the correct one.
Okay, thank you. And now it's public input, an opportunity for the public to comment on items not on the agenda. Okay. That was quick. And now, I would like to say that the RSU 14 Board of Directors is very pleased to announce that we have selected Chris Howell to be our new superintendent. Chris has served in many capacities in the district: teacher, principal, curriculum coordinator, assistant superintendent. In each one, he has far exceeded all expectations, and we are very, very lucky that he said yes to us. I would also like to thank publicly the search committee, who worked very hard during this process, representing all of the stakeholders of the RSU. There were representatives from central office, teachers, principals, the Raymond Select Board, the Wyndham Town Council, parents and community members, as well as school board members from both towns. Chris was overwhelmingly our first choice. Thanks to everyone. And now, Eric?
I move to approve the employment contract for Superintendent Christopher Howell at a salary of $136,000, which will extend the contract to June 30th, 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion?
Congratulations.
Congratulations. All those in favor? All those opposed? It's nobody, so the motion carries. All right. Now, I am thrilled to ask the Raymond Elementary and Jordan Small Middle School student project presentations to come forward. Mr. Crockett?
Thank you for this opportunity to share some interesting things that are going on in both schools. These are sort of beyond the curriculum, but they really enhance the curriculum. And good news is I will speak very little during this presentation. Do most from here. So we're going to start with RES. Martha Stone and Lynn Davis are our guidance counselors, and they will take it from here, I think. Where's Beth? We've hidden Miss Peavy.
On your shadow.
They're all yours.
I first want to just thank you for having our students come here, and I know you've had students from the different schools, and that's always special to get a little glimpse of what we're doing in our school that's just not academic, but meeting the needs of students socially and emotionally. Tonight they're going to present something that's been the heart of RES for a long time, many years, even when my students went to school, about the CATS program. But recently we've started with mindfulness in the school, so they'll talk about that a little bit. And so you'll get a glimpse of what we're doing at RES. And we have Ms. Davis and Mrs. Stone, who's our guidance counselors, and our lovely students, who I'm going to have you introduce yourselves. Okay, so would you like to come up and introduce yourself? We practice this.
My name is Phoebe Acosta Atham. My name is Bailey Ward. My name is Isabel Vasquez. My name is Taylor Morris.
All right.
And, oh, we have two more.
Just in time.
Yay.
My name is Elme.
My name is Emma.
Okay, everybody's here. That's awesome. So thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about our positive school climate programs. My name is Martha Stone, and I'm the school counselor at Raymond Elementary School. And these are 7 of our cats, and they're going to tell you about our 4th grade cat program. So, girls, you want to stand in front of the, you can, let's see, I think you'd be better in front of the, yeah,
Sure,
so
absolutely.
let's move around.
Maybe we can move as a group. We can probably flip the microphone out there. I think. We're gonna surround them with microphones now.
Should we move this over?
Just be careful.
We're good.
Oh, you've got one.
What is an iCare cat? CAT stands for Caring Assistant Team. They are 4th grade students who show younger students how to behave to make a school a safe and friendly place. They follow the iCare rules. These are some of the iCare rules. We listen to each other. Hands are for helping, not hurting. We use iCare language. We care about each other's feelings. And we are responsible for what we say and do.
How do you become a cat? You do your schoolwork and have good attendance. You show respect for others. Students are nominated by their classroom teachers, specialists, and other students.
Teachers and guidance counselors make the final decisions. Once nominated, the students complete an application and collect signatures of approval from their parents, their teacher, and specialist, and the guidance counselor.
What do cats do?
They are role models for the iCare rules. They hand out tokens in grade kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grades who do their work and follow the rules.
When the token jar in the office is filled to the top with tokens from the classrooms, the whole school earns a reward. Do you have any questions?
What's the latest reward that you earned?
Beach
Beach day? Ooh.
I have a
Good thing you're
question.
having that in school.
We didn't actually go to the beach.
No, thanks.
You guys told us a little bit, and I think I missed a little bit about how you get picked to be a cat. You can just tell me what your experience, like how you guys did it.
You follow the iCare rules.
Yeah.
So you have good attendance.
Good attendance.
Oh, well, our teachers, specialists, and guidance counselors. And at the end they make and students, and they make a final decision and find out who's going to be. We currently have 12 cats right now.
That's right. And do you have to fill out an application?
Yeah, and we have to fill it.
So they fill out an application and they get signatures from 3 teachers and Mrs. Davis and I. Mr.
And how do they choose? How do you choose who you hand tokens to?
If they're doing their work and being quiet.
So on Tuesday mornings, they go to the kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade classrooms with tokens, and they wear their sashes, and they have their tokens, and they kind of help those students on Tuesday morning start their day off right.
Mrs. Brooks?
I wanted to ask about the sashes and what is on them. They look different. Each one looks a little different.
We got to make our name tags, and we earn hands by getting stars and tokens from art teachers, specialist teachers, and
Can you give each other tokens?
Oh, no.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Because I'm really old and I can't read that from here. Can you read those? Is it 5 eye care rules?
Yes. Yeah.
Could you read that for me?
We
Please?
listen to each other. Hands are for helping, not hurting. We use I care language.
We care about each other's feelings.
We're responsible for what we say and do.
Excellent.
Which do you think is the most important one?
They're all equally important.
Good
That was a good answer.
Couldn't trick her.
I think you planted that.
They did relax a lot when they knew Miss Cummings was going to be.
Marge?
So do you consider yourself leaders? Are you trying to show and lead the other younger students into these are the things that you should be aware of and think are important?
Well, we try to be role models.
Good. Excellent.
Any other questions?
I have a comment. As someone who, my daughter's in 1st grade, I think you are all wonderful role models for those little ones. So thank you very much for being a part of this program and being role models for them.
And could we get the young lady who just joined us to introduce yourself?
I'm Macy.
Right now, they also have kits, cats in training, that come up from 3rd grade and help them out for the end of the year so that they're ready in the fall. So they're good direct role models for them. They go into the classrooms with them for the last month and a half or so of school.
You know, I know this is a very awkward situation for you kids to be in, but we're very, very happy that you came. And is there anything other than what you have written there that you think that we should know about the program that you might not have written down there that's important to you? I guess everything's important.
So we did hear that you wanted to hear a little bit about our mindfulness program at
Yes.
Raymond Elementary School and also at Jordan Small Middle School. So, Mrs. Davis, are you going to show the video first?
I can show the video.
So we have a short video about mindfulness education and girls.
Don't stretch that far.
I know.
Yeah, he's going to be moving soon anyway.
So just
I don't know what she's going to do when they all age out.
I know.
Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
That one.
That's not mine.
Mirroring? Yeah.
System preferences mirroring. Al, you should be over here doing this. Let the Al.
This view displayed. I was trying to get my system.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually on the other screen. Oh, let me see if I can help.
So both screens, too.
Oh, I see. That's why I'm There we go. Oh, nice. There you go.
When I do a mindful activity, it feels very quiet and calming and centered, like I'm the only person in the room.
Schools are places where there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of conflict, a lot of dysregulated nervous systems.
When they come in the morning, we do mindful practice, and sometimes they come upset or tired, but they know that they can find calmness in their breathing. It helps them to focus.
Sometimes, like when people bother me a lot, I'll be like a less calm student, like have a lot of anger.
What if we just created a space where we could take a moment to really come back to what's most important?
Mindfulness is like where you go to a quiet space and focus on your breath and what's around you. It's like for another way to cool down when you're mad. When I can't figure out the answer to a question on a test, I get really stressed sometimes, but then I stop and then I notice what I'm doing.
That pause impacts our well-being, but it impacts how we react and respond.
I say, okay, right now I'm feeling very angry. I need to calm down. And then I say, I can do this if I review it one time. Maybe I just need to count down from 10.
To move towards these 21st century skills, there's so many foundational pieces that help those things happen. While we're breathing in and breathing out, if our mind starts to wander to lunch or thinking about other things, and as soon as we realize we're thinking, we can come right back. It's like we're getting our minds ready to just stay right where we are.
My mind is like, it wandered off to like a place that's calm and peaceful.
Oh, wow. How did that feel?
It felt great.
It's a way for us to approach supporting children's social emotional development. Kids need to be taught skills really intentionally. Mindfulness has helped me just kind of slow it down a little bit and just be really present for parents and for students, acknowledging teachers' needs.
Teachers have a lot of stress. Mindfulness had helped my practice and become a better teacher, having the calmness that the kids need to solve their problems, to being able to learn better.
By starting with the adults in the community, we're helping the whole community. It impacts our ability to listen and to relate to other people and have empathy, build resilience and confidence in kids, which is so powerful.
When I do mindfulness, I feel calm and I have confidence. When I do mindfulness, I feel calm and steady. If everyone in the world practiced mindfulness, it would be more peaceful and they wouldn't be as afraid to express themselves and tell themselves to calm down. If everybody used it, there wouldn't be as much problems.
So that gives you a little background on what mindful education is. And at Raymond Elementary School, the iCare CAT curriculum, the iCare rules, they mesh perfectly with mindfulness, because for every iCare rule, if you're going to follow it, you need to be mindful. If you're going to be listening to others, if you're going to keep your body in control, care about others' feelings, take responsibility and think about the kinds of decisions you're going to make and use polite or iCare language, mindfulness is really important. Taking time to think about what you're doing, paying attention to what's going on around you, and being mindful of it. So the curriculum for the iCare rules is taught kindergarten through second, third grade, pretty much. They learn the basics, of course, from their teachers and from the guidance counselor in kindergarten, and they practice those. They get review them throughout the grade. So I do different lessons. The teachers, reinforce those rules. They're said every morning on the intercom by our students. And then we've started something new this year, which is called the Mindful Minute. And during the Mindful Minute, it's first thing in the morning, and after announcements, we do that, and we sing a little song afterwards. So we're going to demonstrate that for you, and we'd also like you to participate in the Mindful Minute. So it's time for our Mindful Minute. So everyone take a deep breath in through their nose and a full breath out through their mouth. Close your eyes or find a soft gaze and just breathe in and out to calm your body and your mind to prepare for a wonderful day of learning. I will ring the chime at the beginning and the end of the minute. Beautiful job. And now it's time for our learning time song. Are you ready? It is learning time, it is learning time, my number one job, my number one job. Listening and focus, learning time, and have a wicked good Wednesday. So our cats have tokens for all of you.
Thank you.
Because you did a beautiful job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And there's just one more thing, one of the things that we say at Raymond Elementary School when we see children in the classroom that are kind of wiggly and jiggly, and when we see kids in the hallway that are running instead of walking, or talking when they shouldn't be, we say, just breathe and settle your glitter. So these are Mrs. Peavy's glitter jars. She has one that takes a long time. Well, she doesn't need it at all.
Sometimes this is my brain. And then some days it can settle a little faster. So we've talked about how sometimes our brain, we can settle slowly or faster depending on what's going on. So it's not always the same for everyone or at any point in time. So the kids usually like when they come to my office, they mesmerize with this one. You can. You may need it. That's your new position.
So this glitter jar is for you all. We made this for you in case you ever need to settle your glitter.
Frequently.
Well, I think we all do. So we teach lots of tools. You might have seen the student with their hand like this. So this is 5-finger breathing. So this is one of the strategies that we teach the students. It's actually the most popular one. So you breathe in and out and in and out. And all they need is their hand, and they can just close their eyes if they like, and just breathe and settle your glitter. Thank you very much.
Just a second, Marge.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on the wellness committee with Donna Morton, and she would be thrilled if she saw this, because at the last 3 meetings we've had, that's been the discussion, is mindfulness and how do we get it in for the students and for staff, getting into each of the schools. And I can't believe how well that you've been able to incorporate it into your school. I think it's great. It's great for the staff and it's great for the students. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I have wonderful support for doing this work, so I feel really fortunate to be able to do this in the school.
Thank you
And we
very,
believe
very much.
students are more than, I always say that students are more than just the academics. Before they can access their academics, they really need to be able to come to school and be in a safe place and in a calm place, and actually doing the more that students and adults, because we see it with our staff sometimes, they'll model it because they need a moment. But the more that individuals are able to do that, you're rewiring your brain and teaching strategies. And given our society as it is, students really need to learn at a young age how to cope with stressors, and there's a lot of them. I also want to say that our parent advisory committee, every year we send out a survey to our parents to see, the different parts of our school, nursing, cafeteria, all those areas. This year we added the social emotional piece, and so one of the questions we asked on there is there an adult your child feels safe or connects with? Because that's really important to know children are coming to school and they have an adult that they are comfortable with talking to. And the other is, are they talking about mindfulness at home? And so we've had a lot, I've just been scanning some of the surveys, and so there's a positive that the kids are talking about it at home, and so that's really important as well, so that it transfers at home. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I'll let them transition and introduce some folks from Jordan Small. A couple of things I wanted to highlight from Jordan Small had to do with technology, specifically video production. And Mr. Newcomb's here, and he'll talk to you more about that, but seen him doing, he calls it digital storytelling for a long time with students in the GT program. But I also want to send a shout out to John Powers. He's coaching his son's baseball game right now, but John came to the team leaders at Jordan Small a couple years ago, really excited about something he'd seen in SAD 17, which is where his kids go to school. And they had developed a video awards night based on student-created video. And it had been going there for a couple of years before John saw it, but he was really thinking, how can we bring this to Jordan Small and maybe even make it bigger than that? So that led to an iMovie, basically, festival that we call the Raymonds. It's like the Oscars, but it's the Raymonds. Yeah. And there's a little, and so there's categories and winners and so forth. But it started out as sort of an 8th grade project. And John said this would be a great sort of culminating spring project for the 8th graders to really get involved with, and a lot of interest, of course, in video images with this generation. So John was the founder of that, and it keeps growing every year. But I will let Chris Newcomb take it from here.
All right. Where am I hooking up to?
I thought I
Let me need to sneak over. All right. See if they show up or not.
Yeah.
There we go. That's what I need, so. Do I have to swipe to get this to do it, Al? What am I doing? Oh, that's why Al's here. There we go. I would have figured it out, but not that fast. All right. Let's get rid of all this stuff. All right. So what I wanted to share was how we use digital technology at Jordan Small Middle School, and some of it at RES. You know, it was, I can't remember the year it was that we got the MLTI program started. And it started with 7th graders. And then every year, I think it's every 3 years, we get new laptops, and so we pass those down. Al Potter's grade, I think, if I understand it, was the first, were you kindergarten or first grade when you had laptops? First grade, right? Yeah. That they had their own individual laptops. Up until then, we'd pass them down, some wouldn't make it, you know, they were worn out. And then we'd add a few more, but classes would get a few. You know, the lower grades would get a few. You know, finally, that class, who's the current 8th grade, they started out their school year basically with individual laptops, and it makes a huge difference. I mean, this is a digitally savvy group of kids, and it's amazing what they know. So we use everything from the moment I walk into school. You know, I sit there and I get on my computer and I get my message from Randy, what's happening today, who's here, who's not here, any changes in the schedule, anything I need to know. Attendance is done online. We even pledge the flag online because we don't have a flag in our room, so I display a flag and we pledge to the flag. You know, so it's all that. I can communicate with teachers, of course, all the basic things that we all know. It's wonderful. But, for example, one of the things we've just done is we just finished reading Animal Farm in my 7th and 8th grade English Language Arts class. And with Animal Farm, it's such a rich, rich book. But before you start a book like that, I need them to know, first of all, what is an allegory? So I asked them what an allegory is. Well, out on the web they go. You know, bang, just look at all the sites you can find. Just Animal Farm, what is an allegory? You do the research, etc. So then we got allegory. Then they need to understand that this is a book about, since it's an allegory, what is it an allegory of? It's the allegory of the Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution. So now, look at YouTube. The tons and tons of videos on the Russian Revolution. They're fantastic. And a lot of them are 10 minutes long. Somebody has taken the time to put a 10-minute video and say, bang, this is what that's all about. So we start with what that is. But you can't do that without knowing who Karl Marx is and what communism is. This would have taken weeks before. You know, we could have done this, gone to the library, gone to research, asked them to do it. Boy, it would have taken forever. Now, at a flip of a switch, in there it is. There's Karl Marx. Then you got to understand what propaganda is. So I can teach propaganda, I can do all that, but guess what we have? We have an incredible course. We have bands called propagandists and music, but there's incredible stuff about propaganda here. And one of the films that I think I showed that I loved, well, there's Noam Chomsky, amazing film. Where was it? Anyway, down here. So tons of information on propaganda. Then we finally get to read the book. You know, we've done all this preparation now, and we had discussions. Now we're going to read the book. But when you read the book, so we've read it. It's taken us, what do you think, 3 weeks? Maybe something like that. We've read the book aloud in class, which is great, discussions back and forth. Today, we began by watching the first movie. In 1954, there's an animated movie of George Orwell. So now one of the standards that the kids have, besides understanding allegory, figures of speech, all those types of things, is also understanding how do you compare. So we have a book we've read. Now we're going to compare it to the first movie that was made, and that's a totally animated version. And then there's a 1999 version we'll watch next week, which is made with human beings and real animals. And you'd think that the animals trying to speak would be awful, but they do it so well, it's amazing. So all those kind of things are there. Then in math, so I teach advanced math for, well, 4th grade right through 8th, well, no, through 6th. And so one of the things is, you know, we have math programs. We've got everyday math now. We're going to a new math program. But no math program, no reading program, no writing program can do everything that's needed. So if you go on, I mean, YouTube is such a wonderful resource, just the digital stuff. So how many different ways are there to multiply? You get a kid who's stuck, well, try to show him another way. You know, how many different ways are there to do this, that, or the other thing? There's a great series of math programs called Math Antics. And, you know, he just, everything from volume, introduction to the metric system. He does such a great job, a better job than I would do in the class, and the kids love it. You know, it is their world. They love watching the thing. They love playing the games that he does. It's fantastic. So there's lots of different ways that he teaches things that I can make. Here's the content. You know, I get the content to him, and then now we work in class, and that's where I get to be the teacher. I mean, the thing about digital technology is, you know, we're not facilitators as teachers. We're teachers. So it's not the digital technology that's the great gift. It is a wonderful gift, but it's what we do. It's what the teachers bring to the table to make it, you know, a good, meaningful experience. One of the other things is, moving towards the iMovie thing, is there's this guy, Kyle Wood. He's an elementary teacher, and he has put hundreds, he's an art teacher, and he's put hundreds of different art projects out. YouTube videos are fantastic. But he also decided to start working with iMovie. And he's got all these videos on how to do special effects, how to, like the cloning effect that you did, how to, you know. So I have 4th graders, 5th graders, they're all learning how to do special effects with iMovie by watching Kyle Wood, and then we just do it step by step. It's wonderful. Another thing that's wonderful, my 5th grade book, our students read the book Small Like an Elephant this year. And Small Like an Elephant takes place in Maine, and it's got several stories going on at once, of course. But one is about a boy who starts out camping in Southwest Harbor with his mother, and he wakes up and she's gone. And he is now going to work his way back down to Kennebunk or something, or New York. And so the story takes place, goes through Bar Harbor, goes through, and so we can get on Google Earth and do the satellite, and we go with him. And I mean, the LL Bean store, we're right there with him. We're looking at the LL Bean store. We get to a street in Searsport, there's the business. We get on it, get on the street, and there's the door of the store that he walks into. I mean, it's a virtual tour of the book as we read it. Meanwhile, there's another story about elephant sanctuaries. We were able to get a live feed of an elephant sanctuary in the room. And, you know, the kids are like, wow, now one walks along and all this, and we did research on what's going on with elephants and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, the internet is just an amazing tool for that type of thing. So all that said, we also have, because the iMovie Festival, and that John Powers has brought to us, we also have, you know, like I say, these students who from their 1st grade on have had laptops in their laps and had that technology. Al Potter, who I'm going to introduce and I'm going to talk to you, is a very wonderful and unique student. He is the first person I know of in the state of Maine, and maybe nationally, who has been identified as gifted in digital technology, because there is no category for him. And we have tried to identify him for years, and he couldn't be identified because the categories and the criteria don't ever include digital technology. I've gone to the state of Maine, I've met at meetings, this is foolish. They all agree this is foolish. But we're sticking to the, English language arts, math, blah, blah, blah. It's ridiculous. We have kids who are so talented digitally, and we have to reach them. There are kids in our school who, if we were identifying more of them and serving them and saying, this is really a subject by itself, it's a core subject, they would have a better experience in our schools. So, Al is an example of someone, but way beyond. That's why I say, Al, what do you do? If there's a teacher who needs help, Al's the guy you go to. Anyway, so Al is, he's going on his way to, what kind of Star Scout now, or what? Life. He's a Life Scout now, an amazing person. I have had the joy of working with him since first grade, and he's now in the 8th grade. And I introduced to you Al Potter, who's going to talk to you about iMovie and Gullible TV, etc. So, yay, Al.
All right, hello, my name is Al Potter, and I'm here to talk a little bit about digital technology and how we've been using it in the classroom. So one of the most impressive ways we've been using digital technology in my class is through a program called Gullible TV. Gullible TV is Jordan Small's middle school's own TV show. It's really interesting. We offer many creative segments that allows contestants to chime in, and we have competitions between the contestants. So I'm going to show you a quick clip of a whole bunch of random parts of a bunch of our episodes.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Gullible TV. Hello everyone and welcome to Gullible TV. Hello everyone and welcome back to Gullible TV. Hello everyone and welcome back to Gullible TV. Many people think that farmers are stuck in past. A new app proves that wrong. Named Tutter, who makes it kinder and utter. The app is just that. An app to let farmers swipe right on a cattle they like the look of. Gullible TV is a fun and exciting environment. And we have various segments like wacky news and strange domains. And if you're a guest on Gullible TV, you can get taken out of class. If you win the episode, you'll be appearing on the Tournament of Champions, where you can win special prizes. You'll love Gullible TV! Visit www.gullibletv.com today.
The end of that video is actually a commercial we made for the iMovie Festival, so we could get more guests on our show. So clearly, without the use of technology, this show would never really have been a thing. So now I'm just going to kind of talk about some of the stuff we use to make this thing really happen. So when we're in the initial phase of planning an episode, our writing team starts off by collecting information off the web and placing it in a shared Google Drive folder. The shared folder allows all the team members to access it on their own time. Google Drive allows some really great collaboration between team members and really speeds up the process when it comes to writing all the information for shows. Also, Google Drive allows us to store backups of our episodes in case something goes wrong. I really can't think of a better way to have all of our information episodes on here than Google Drive. It just makes it really simple. So after we have our episode all planned out, we need to set up all of the technology. So Gullible TV is run just like a traditional TV show where all of the intros and cameras are all managed live. But instead of needing one of these expensive control rooms, we use a software that looks like this. What you're seeing right now is an application called Open Broadcast Software, or OBS. It does everything that room does, but on a single screen. In OBS, we connect all of our cameras and microphones, and we put our intros in. And this gets rid of the need to edit any of our episodes, so we can get them on our website much faster. So this is just, I just took a little video. So that's the Mac Mini that we actually are running everything on. Those are the microphones for our guests. They're wireless. Our soundboard that Mr. Vickers, the tech person at our school, bought us. It's amazing. Really glad he bought that. And then this is just a little kind of demo. That's what it looks like live. And so basically it just lets us play intros. That's our outro right there. And everything is done live. It's being recorded. It's awesome. So you never need to edit it after you're done. You can upload it. It just makes everything a breeze. Okay, next. So after we finish setting up, we start to move on to the audio equipment. Gullible TV is lucky enough to be equipped with professional level sound equipment. Each host has a small wireless microphone that looks something like that. which is clipped to their shirt, and the guests both share a generic microphone. Now all of these microphones lead into the soundboard that I showed before, which is finally plugged into that silver Mac Mini looking thing. Okay, so after that, we start to film the episode, but there's more. Early off in the planning process, we decided we wanted our very own website to host all of our episodes. www.gullibletv.com is a real working website that the students and I created. This website is not only great to host all of our episodes, but it also gives students a way to join in on the show. If a student wants to be a guest, they just have to click a little button and they can be a guest on our show. So this is kind of just a little tour of the show. So that's our website, and those are all the segments we have. And if you click on those, it actually gives you information about, that's fact or fake, where it's kind of like is this fact or fake? Like, the first living thing to be sent in orbit was a fish. Is that fact or is it fake? The guests have to try to answer that fact or fake, and that's how they get onto the show, if they answer so many correct. Yeah, so that's the About Us page, and I think next I'm going to the Episodes page. So one of the things we had to figure out is we wanted this to be secure so that all the students' information wasn't just out there on the web, and it wasn't just out there. Like, we have a talent release form that they all have to sign. So their parents are all aware of this, but they have to put in a password, and then they can access all 5 of our episodes that are up right now. And I'm just going to go through these, and I think next is, so if you wanted to be a guest, like I said before, you can just click that button that says click here to be a guest, and it brings you to another page where you click on form. So this is another thing where Google Drive comes in handy. It's a Google form, which they just fill everything out, the fact or fake stuff, and they submit it to us, and we get all of the stuff live. So then we can just tell them, you're going to be a guest, fill out the talent release form, and we're filming on Friday. It's super easy. So for Gullible TV, that's it, and I'm now going to briefly talk about the Raymond's iMovie Festival. So for those of you who don't know, here at Jordan Small Middle School, we are lucky enough to have our very own film festival called the Raymonds. The Raymonds is a fundraiser for the 8th grade class, which allows students kindergarten through high school to enter in a movie for a chance to win a prize. Each movie is competing against other movies in their grade level. On the day of the Raymonds, filmmakers get a chance to walk down a red carpet covered with paparazzi and cameras and everything, and then they eventually accept their award. For students in elementary school, 8th grade students help out by filming and editing their movie. This provides 8th graders with the ability to work with the younger students and helps them with public speaking. Now you may be asking, how does a film festival bring digital technology into the classroom? Well, this film festival puts the movie magic into the students' hands. Each student film must film and edit their very own movie. Each student is equipped with a laptop just like this with iMovie, which is a fabulous free editing software made by Apple. After making your first movie, students will start to understand how iMovie works. And by their second to third movie, they will have it down pat. With students all over our school having the ability to film and edit their own movie, more and more teachers are allowing students to have their projects created using iMovie. The days of posters are gone, with students now wanting to show off what they learned creating a movie. When students choose to create a movie instead of a poster, they get the opportunity to express what they learned in a different way. Instead of writing it down, they have to act it out. And finally, I would just like to thank Mr. Vickers again for supplying all of this amazing equipment to our school, because without this, I don't know, it would be really weird because we wouldn't have any of this. So thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Wow, you know, how do you do that? I mean, this is like, wow. I mean, how do you, we're I don't know, I'm speechless. You're waving on me.
I have to tell you guys, the iMovie Festival is so much fun to go to.
It really is.
I mean, and really it's everybody, like the kindergartners. I think last year I remember watching one of the kindergarten classes had learned like the sounds of the letters using different like animals and things, and that's what their movie was, and it was so adorable, and Al's was kind of scary, but it's fine, you get through it. But they're really, I mean, the older kids are awesome about sort of mentoring and taking on the little kids, and there's a red carpet and people are there with like their big fancy cameras, and it's a huge thing now for us, and I really encourage you guys to come out and see because it's awesome.
This year we're actually making our own, or John's having made our own trophies.
Oh, nice.
Oh, good.
Well,
Students are making
Yeah.
I'll tell you, a couple years ago, my Olivia, I think she was in 2nd grade, and her class got a trophy, and she was on the stage going, "It's real plastic." Setting the bar low. Okay.
Al, how long are the iMovies?
Yeah, movies have to be 5 minutes or less. So, yeah.
And was the first one that you did a stay motion or a claymation one?
I used some stop motion in it. The first movie was basically
Was
there was this little
hysterical.
chip that went around and took over this drone, and the drone took over my life, and it was kind of like driving cars. It was very
Didn't it
interesting.
explode
But
your house or something like
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
It exploded my house, yeah. I used stop motion for the first part, so I learned that technique too, which was really cool.
You know, you're the first person I ever saw do your capstone in the 8th grade.
Mrs. Briggs?
I want to go back to your TV show that was just so cool. And I'm wondering, have you ever had to reject a guest?
We haven't had that many guests, so we're kind of like desperate. Like we've had guests that are like, "Oh yeah, we want to do it," and then they don't. So then we have to like minutes before we're about to film, we have to find guests last minute. We're like, "Oh come on, it's gonna be fun." We kind of like bribe them by saying, "You're missing math class."
So I ran into your dad at the grocery store, and he said you learned everything from him. Is that true? Your mom's laughing, so.
No, I learned majority of the stuff by just basically experience. If I don't know something, I just try to figure it out until I get it.
Awesome.
Great job.
How was your birthday?
Birthday was good, thank you.
Glad to hear.
Do you have a video of it?
Well, that was fabulous.
Awesome.
Nice
Absolutely
job.
fabulous. Nice job.
Very
Thank you.
impressive.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity too, what was the first animal that went into space?
Goldfish.
Was it a dog or a monkey?
Yeah, it was one.
It was
Yeah,
a dog.
one of those.
Okay.
It wasn't a fish. Fish was fat. Fish was fake.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add real quickly that first of all, I think Al's amazing.
Yes.
But I don't know that 12 owls are. They're a little scary. But every part of that show, literally every part of the show, the students make themselves. They've done the animation, they do the music, they do the logos. They figured all of that out. I am in the room, but that's about it. And as far as all the Google Classroom things that he does with the Google Forms, I can't do those. I should have learned them by now. But this is part of what's been happening in education. It's wonderful. I mean, this is what's happening, and our kids are really savvy with this stuff. So that was it. So thank you again, Al, and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, Bill, after that.
Yeah, I know.
Could we have some information about do we need a motion first? I think we need a motion first. Okay. Could we have a motion, please?
I move to authorize the superintendent to enter into a contract with the apparent low bidder, A.H. Grover, in the amount of $276,650 to complete the base bid and alternate number 1 of RFP number 19-13 Wyndham Primary School Site Work Project from the Capital Reserve Plan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Okay. Any board discussion? Do you want to talk to us? Okay.
Do you have a video, Bill?
That was pretty darn impressive. Wow. Yeah.
It's a tough act to
This will
follow,
not be as exciting. There's no iMovie, no iTunes.
I feel like we all need
no
a
nothing.
minute to settle on glitter.
Yeah, there's only one.
We gotta settle it later.
So here tonight, seeking board approval for funding to continue a project we started in, believe it or not, 2013. I'm getting old because it's not just yesterday we started this project to improve the site conditions at the Wyndham Primary School. So as you remember, that Women Empowerment School work was put on hold for a while because we had the opportunity to work with the National Guard to complete this project up here in Raymond, which I'm hoping, if all stays in schedule and it ever stops raining, we'll be able to open that playground in the fall of 2019. That's been our original plan all along. So just for those people out watching on TV, we just need to have some sun and a good summer growing season, and we're hopeful to open it for the fall of 2019. The other things that have delayed this project were the fact that we replaced 2 roofs as well during that time. So it's time to come back to Woodland Primary School. I'm really excited about that. So the scope of this work completes the second of 3 water quality filters. And what's really important for that, our permit that we got, the site law permit, requires us to have those filters. And their primary purpose is to collect the storm water. Then they will slowly release the water back into the environment, and any sediment or oils or stuff gets trapped in those stormwater ponds. So we had it partially built, so this will be completed at that point in time. We're going to complete the small play field that's in the end of the parking lot of primary school. Again, so when I say complete, it means probably opening it in the fall of 2020, because we'll need to have another whole full growing season. Really, we do need 2 growing seasons for field to become established. So that would happen. And then we're going to be completing the expansion of that parking lot on this side of primary school. That's really the scope of the work that we're talking about. We'll be putting in new lights when we expand the parking lot, adding some additional sidewalks to improve accessibility, but that's really this next phase. What isn't being done, which was planned originally, was the expansion of the playground out into the woods behind where the 2 new playground structures are. So that would be the final portion of the project. And at this point in time, I think it really behooves us to wait to see what our plans are with a new middle school before we move ahead with that last phase, because that may need to change. So that's really what we're talking about here. As far as funding goes, it's funded through capital reserve. And the contract that we'd be developing would be contingent upon successful passing of the budget that's in process right now. That's typical we would do anyway. But we need to secure the contractor now to start working on the project. There's $100,000 in our current capital reserve for the project, and the budget plan calls for a transfer of $200,000 from the year-end fund balance into the reserve for our $300,000 that we need to complete the work. So, any questions?
Marge? It's been a while since I saw that print.
Sure.
So, just refresh. Okay, we go up near the cafeteria. You're on the cafeteria side.
Correct.
Right?
The AS side.
Okay, so the parking lot, is that going to be the end where it's hot top now?
No, that's actually, it's hard to tell. When we finished the stop the project last time, you know, Bill pushed it as far as he possibly could, as I normally do. There's actually quite a bit of gravel parking lot there that never was completed. So we're going to add, I believe, 21 parking spots gets added to that parking lot, which is desperately needed. If you're there on a Wednesday or any time during parent drop or pick up or after school, it's pretty full.
Yeah.
So it adds 21 parking spaces on that end.
Okay, and just give me a little refresher. When you said finish the rest of the playground off, I'm visualizing that playground in my mind, and it's kind of like, are you talking about going over further behind the parking lot?
No, so behind the parking lot right now, we have the base has been set for a small ball field that we had planned to put there.
Right.
So what has not been completed is we haven't put the sand, the loam, and the seed in, nor the perimeter fence. And there's actually a perimeter walking path that goes around, so the kids actually have a walking loop they can go on if they need to get some wiggles out of their legs. They can walk around.
Okay. Now, was that in 3? I'm having a tough time trying to remember because we had 4 phases. Was that part of 3?
It was
or
actually
4?
part of phase 4.
Okay.
Phase 4 was completing all the back of the area, included expanding the hard play surface that's not included in this part of the project. Expand the parking lot and creating 2 ball fields. The small field we're completing now is more like a kickball or maybe a coach pitch ball, a t-ball field, and then there was a larger rectangular field that we're going to create further into the woods that would have created a larger play space. It's very similar to the rectangular field that's been created for RES.
Okay, so if I can remember correctly, and this was basically to keep the kids off of the baseball field up. I know, because I know they like to play kickball, and I know your grounds people have a fit when the kids go up back and play up there because they want to they want to get ready for ball. So will that take care of that, the kickball?
Well, the long-term plan we had with this whole project was to create a playground that was
Yeah.
complete ADA compliant and accessible. And the challenge you have with the Seahouse playground is it's not, because you have to
Right.
go up that roadway to get there. And the other challenge you have, and I tell you, if I was in third grade and there at that time, if you get out on that field 5, you can just go.
Yeah, you
And
can.
go.
You really can.
Go. So the
It was
plan
nice.
for the project when we're all done is actually a permanent fence that attaches to the building near where the exit for by the library is, and it goes all the way back around permanent back to where the cafeteria is, so that you have a defined boundary. Very similar, again, like we'd have at RES.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Beat?
Can you just clarify a couple of things for me? First, what is an apparent low bidder as opposed to just a low bidder?
That is language that we use, okay? And I guess at this point in time, I would say they are the low bidder. Based on all the information we have in reviewing the bids, looking at all the information provided, they're the apparent low bidder. It's a term that we've always used. So I would say they are the low bidder because if you look at the numbers, Tamberg was higher and we only received 2 bids. I'll tell you what I will do is I'll look into that with Chris, because I think it's a legalese term that I'll get clarification on.
All right, and the other thing I just wanted you to clarify for me was if you can just kind of break down the base bid, the alternate 1 and the alternate 2, what that all means. Maybe I missed it, but you'd given us a memo.
Okay, so alternate 2, I'll start backwards. Alternate 2 was including the pavement from the parking area all the way out to the access road, which is from 202, which will shortly be named Educational Way. Okay, because right now we have just the base pavement on a good portion of that.
Okay.
So alternate 1 is to complete repave that parking lot. So the base includes completing the extension of the parking lot with the gravel, but alternate 1 basically includes tearing up the pavement, which is in pretty sore shape, adding the new lights and repaving the whole section. So we'd be done. It would be base pavement plus top course. So you'd be done from the parking lot all the way out to where the field starts. We'd be working our way back out towards Educational Way if we could do alternate 2, which we don't have funding for at this time.
All right. Thank you.
I think because there's 3 sections to this, and you'll see that it's not even, somebody's higher on this, one lower on that, so that you take the sum of those, and that's your apparent low bidder, as if you took all the project to fruition.
Right, and typically when we do a bid like this, unless we state it up front and it's really easy and clean to separate, we generally work with one contractor because there's a mobilization cost to come on site and work, and then there's a coordination when you try to get two contractors to kind of meet in the middle somewhere. It can be challenging.
Right, because somebody's not gonna do phase 3 if they didn't get phase 1.
Correct.
If I could just mention the, back to the funding, there's currently $100,000 in capital for this project. We need an additional $177,000 to complete it. So next Wednesday night, whatever the last article is that the public gets a chance to vote on for capital reserve will be the additional funding to complete this project. If the community says that they don't want to do that, then Bill has it written in that we will stop the project at that point and we will not be continuing forward with it. It is money that we already have. It's part of your fund balance. It's just that night we're asking the community to reallocate it from the original allocation where they would have done a year ago to the different projects for across the district. So a lot's hinging upon the May 22nd meeting to finish this project.
So in the future, we would need to look at completing alternate 2 at some future time, because we can't leave it base pave forever because you risk losing that course pavement if you do that. But I think we can wait another year and we'll consider that as a project for the following fiscal year.
Anything more? Scott?
looks like there's a lot of site work going on. So just out of curiosity, is there any contingencies if the work is not completed by August 23rd?
There's actually some pretty significant liquidated damages if it's not completed in time. And that's all part of the bid contract that went out.
I was curious if that was part of that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. When I come to you to talk to you about the boiler project, there's even more significant.
Fantastic.
There's actually, that some of the bidders flip, but there's a $5,000 a day liquidated damages if they don't run the boiler project in time, because I explained to them we have to have hot water and heat for kids to go to school.
Right.
And that I didn't want to come and talk to you and tell you that we had to have school delayed for a week.
Mm-hmm.
So,
We
but
don't
yeah,
want you to
that's-
do that either.
No. So that's typical to our contracts. We put liquidated damages in, and they're usually a resultant of the project, the schedule that we agree upon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Are we all set? All those in favor?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know Dr. Rhodes will be really happy because they've been in transition with that parking lot not in great, the most wonderful shape, and it'll be nice to have it that we can actually plow and keep it all clean and usable. So, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, could I have a motion to approve the appointments, please?
I move to approve the following appointments for the 2019-2020 school year. Marissa Rhodes, grade 3 teacher, Wyndham Primary School, bachelor's degree with a salary of $38,373. Susanna Stevens, grade 2 teacher, Wyndham Primary School, master's degree, salary $51,362.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion?
I'm just curious, I don't know, it'll probably be another time, but the email that we received from Dr. Rhodes, the one you forwarded, was there any more discussion on that? Because he was looking for possibly another kindergarten. You talking about the kindergarten teacher?
Okay.
Is that still coming up at another
That
time?
will be done at another
Okay.
time. Okay.
Yep.
Just a quick question. Would it be, I'm curious as to the number of years experience with these appointments. Is that too much to ask as far as adding the number of years experience with?
From now on?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sure.
It might kind of help me as far as, looking at the grade that they're teaching, the attainment, and then the salary. If I can just kind of correlate the number of years experience.
Okay, all right. So for going forward,
That would be great.
that
Thank
would
you.
be good. Okay,
And are these replacements?
They are replacements.
okay. It has been moved and seconded, and we've had board discussion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, it's now time for policy workshop. We're going to be discussing IKA grading and reporting and IKF graduation.
As you know, we have been for quite some time in the policy committee discussing graduation policy and the change. Last time ours was approved was 2015, and there's been some changes that were necessary for a variety of reasons. I want to thank particularly Chris Howell, Christine Hessler, Ryan Karen, Rich Meserve, Lisa Garno, Kate Levier.
Okay, very good.
And Janny Cummings, and for spending the time to really get this right. This is our most important policy, in my opinion, for the whole district, the graduation policy, and we spent a great deal of time working on it. Additionally, we're going to also be talking, I say we, but eventually I'm going to pass the baton, but grading and reporting system. By the way, we are, for the graduation policy, we were on version 10. That tells you how long we've kind of massaged that. And then grading reporting, we do not currently have an RSU policy. And we thought it was important. This goes hand in hand with the graduation policy, and it really outlines how we grade our students. And it's very clear so that if you're a parent or a student or staff, you can look at this and know how we operate within the RSU. The same folks were involved in crafting this. In addition, it also was vetted by the A-team so that they had a clear understanding of what this policy would entail and were in agreement with what was being put forth. Our hope is after tonight we'll have a first reading and a second reading so that they have time over the summer to put this into their handbooks and communicate to all the stakeholders how we're going to move forward. So I'm going to pass the baton to Mr. Howell, who will do the deep dive on these policies.
In front of you, and I left on your tables, you have some yellow folders. Yellow folders have all the policies. In addition, there's one other form, which I think will be helpful for our discussion of graduation policy. Christine,
Okay, so it's not this one?
and I'm actually going to use the form. It says Graduation Policy Update 5/15/19, proposed changes in red. It's kind of a way to walk you through some of the differences between the 2015 policy and the 2019 policy. So first of all, since 2015, there's been some changes in our state, even as far as graduation requirements. And initially being the requirement across the state, moving everyone to a proficiency-based diploma based upon meeting standards, and kind of a slowly moving away from credits in the state to now some recent legislation which is really leaving districts on their own as to what they want to do to help determine what it is or what it means for a student to earn their diploma or to graduate. It has always been the position here in the district, and it was a position at Wyndham High School, that this is a very serious thing, graduation, and that we were going to take an approach that wasn't going to harm any kids, that was going to be metered, and that we were going to make sure that it was based on some sound instructional practices. And so this policy, which I think we actually started somewhere around 16, 17, and slowly worked through, and you'll even see in the most current version that you have some strikeouts that have happened just because of some recent changes in legislation and how do we move forward in the district. So just want to kind of quickly walk through some of the changes that you'll see. So first of all, graduation standards. What does it mean to graduate in the state of Maine? Maine learning results and Maine guiding principles being required. In the new policy that you're looking at, still Maine learning results is a requirement of the law, as are the Maine guiding principles. Within our policy, some work that I led at the high school, which Ryan has also picked up on and Christina supported, local graduation and standards and performance indicators. And really what that's about is the high school for the last probably 5 or 6 years, Mike has spent some time, and Mike Levine's a high school teacher doing his administrative internship, one of his classes observing here, but looking at for every single course, what are the standards that a student needs to meet in order to receive credit for that course? Because the last thing we want is a kid to leave a class at the high school having only mastered half the content, which you can do if you just average grades. You can get 100 on half of your assessments, you can earn a 50 on the other half, and get a 75, have a passing average, and you've passed the class, only mastered half the standards. And so we're really working hard as a high school that we're to make sure that when kids leave a course, they've actually mastered that. So remediation plans, all those other pieces. Communication of graduation policy, because communication has always been one of our goals. Old policy, communicated by superintendent through high school principal, the school handbook, and the planning guide. That again goes into the new policy. The new policy, though, includes high school and district websites. Those policies have been there, but going through that communication. Academic credits. Credits don't change. Still 22 credits to graduate from Wyndham High School. The way that you earn a credit, we're going to talk a little different, may look a little bit different. One thing that Ryan has requested is that in the past we denoted out a credit and a half of U.S. history, credit and a half of world history. Instead, we're going to call it 3 credits of social studies. And it's Brian's looking to do some changes with the schedule, going from half credit courses to full credit courses. So it meshes up well with that. Let's go to awarding of credit. In Maine law, the high school principal has the authority to actually assign credit for activities. and in that case, a 69.5 average in all required classes in order to earn credit. High school principal still gives credit. There's still a 70 average in all required classes in order to earn credit. But in addition to that, and this is really one of the big key changes, must meet minimal proficiency in majority of graduation standards assigned to a class to earn credit. So kids will demonstrate that through the assessments in the class, but really what it comes down to, that if a kid is missing out on specific standards or performance indicators, that we're creating remediation plans to help that student recover that so that they can have all the necessary content from that class. And so a majority of graduation standards, I don't have to hit every one, it's not a totality model, but again, we really, really held up pretty high as a high school staff when I was there. We want kids to have the knowledge and the skills before we give them the credit. Still, though, for those traditionalists that are out there, kids are still going to get a 1 to 100 scale grade at Wyndham High School, but in addition, they're also going to get feedback on standards and indicators. It's a hybrid model. It's a model that works well for our community. It's where we are at the moment, and our graduation policy reflects that. Capstone project, one of the things that's near and dear to my heart. Capstone project, this was the first class, 2019. Guess what? For the 2019 policy, that continues on, that kids will have that requirement. And the young man who was here, there are so many different things that we could do for a capstone project. You know, getting him into some local TV stations and, you know, using some of those skills, getting him in with some graphic designers. Great opportunities for capstone project. You know, all sorts of things I can kind of help them out with. Multiple pathways. In our current policy, which is the 2015, there's credit for alternative experiences, adult ed, internship, CTE, granted by the principal. That thing continues on. In fact, our policy outlines more pathways for kids, and one of the things that we've talked about is how do we increase the pathways so that kids have more opportunities outside the 4 walls or 18 walls of Wyndham High School in order to make that happen. Transfer students, this is right in Maine law. It's up to the principal to review the transcript and to determine whether or not a student earns credit. So that can be a transfer student with our exchange kids. One of my favorite exchange transcripts, I had a young lady who was from Russia, and she had Defense of the Motherland as one of her health courses. And it was a civil defense course on survivalism, one of the best courses I've run across. But anyway, so the principal has a chance to then take a look at how does that meet our graduation requirements.
How did that meet our graduation requirements?
There were some, believe it or not, there were some health components because they had done some first aid, some safety, living outdoors. Theirs actually became advanced because they also did weapons training as part of that.
Having visited Russia twice, I completely believe that.
Yep, so she had done that as part of that. We did include the weapons training, however, some of the health pieces, and there was a student who wanted to graduate. Homeschool students. This is a trend that we've seen a little bit more at Wyndham High School, is that we've seen a greater number of homeschool students who, first of all, are enrolling and taking a majority of their courses at Wyndham High School, but also wanting to have a Wyndham High School diploma. And it was not clear in our last policy how that was, other than the high school principal is the one who makes that determination. So we've worked in some language. Students must meet all graduation requirements and complete 75% of their coursework at Wyndham High School. Intention to graduate must be completed by spring of their junior year, and that just gives plenty of time for the principal to meet with the student, to meet with families, and to talk about this is an option, this isn't an option, here are some things that you want to do in order to meet that. And so if we have some questions about that, what's happening presently when I get through this, if Ryan, I'm sure, can answer that because I know he's been working through some situations. Consideration for special education students, and if you remember back to proficiency-based diplomas and some of the conversations that were going around the state was that kids who had IEPs, special education advocates thought there wasn't any way that those students were going to be able to graduate if you had an IEP because what was being required for credits and what was being required for experiences, people are arguing that based upon the classes that students were taking, they would never reach that point. If that had continued on in the law as far as proficiency-based, it was our stance as a policy committee that we were going to put the IEP team in charge of determining the level of proficiency that students needed to meet for earning a diploma. This continues on in this policy, so IEP term determines courses and experience for students to meet the 22 credit requirement, and then determines the proficiency level for standards and performance indicators. And that's really treating every learner who comes into Wyndham High School as different individuals and putting that legal team in charge of determining what graduation looks like for a student. Early awarding of diplomas. There are students who want to finish in 3 years. Currently, students have to apply in the spring of their sophomore year, maintain a B average, and they have to have a plan for continued education after graduation. After that, they would have to meet with the principal and talk about their plan, talk with their parents. Let's just make sure that this is a plan that's going to work. The way that the current policy is going to treat it is that students, because if they want to still finish early, they can. They just need to meet all the graduation requirements, work with their counselor. But this is one piece, as I've kind of reviewed both, is really not explicit. High school already has procedures and things in place, but I think policy, what's one thing we ought to revisit is just that early awarding of diplomas, because it's a piece before we bring you to the first reading.
Okay.
Just to make sure that we're clear,
Yeah, makes
and that
sense.
we're clear with the community with that. Now, delayed awarding of diplomas. This is a little known piece of the law. I don't think it's anything I've ever given a diploma for, but Ryan had the chance to. If a kid leaves Wyndham High School and they've not earned their diploma, but they make it into an accredited institution that grants degrees, they successfully finish their freshman year, they can then be awarded their high school diploma. It's in state statute. I've never had the opportunity to do that. Ryan has. Extended study. Students are eligible to enroll as long as they've not reached the age of 20 at the start of school year. You do not want to have 21-year-olds in with your high school population. And so there are other opportunities along with that. And then the one other change here, in the previous policy, participation in graduation was that you had to complete all graduation requirements to participate. That still is the case. There's an exception written in here, is that students who are determined to be eligible for 5th year by their IEP team prior to their sophomore year, and these are students who are entering the high school that we know are going to be a 5-year student or going to be a 6-year student based upon their needs. It has been the tradition of Wyndham High School to allow students that may be in the Bridges program or the Life Skills program to graduate with their cohort, but it was something that was never ever in policy. It was something that's been done prior to my time. This really solidifies that the IEP team, who typically make that decision during the freshman year, that this is going to be a 5-year or 6-year based upon those students can then, who are in that situation, can participate with their cohort. However, you only can participate in one graduation ceremony. And we do have students that take advantage of this, and it's a great opportunity for them. So that really is kind of an overview of some of the changes that are within the policy. Regardless of what the state does with proficiency-based diplomas, I think this policy represents what we think is best instructionally for our kids. And also I think as far as grading and reporting, we're going to talk about here in a second, but I think also reflects what our communities ask for a grading and reporting policy. So any questions about graduation itself? It's not water. Don't drink the glitter.
Any questions?
May I? The consideration for special education students and then the participation in graduation ceremony. How are those two tied together? If an IEP team determines that this is what you're going to need to graduate, and they accomplish that, it automatically will tie in with the participation in graduation ceremony?
There are students that currently attend Wyndham High School that, due to who they are as a learner, will never earn the 22 credits.
Right.
based upon their program, because their program is not such where they are participating in classes to earn credit. Some may be participating in classes in order to earn some life skills, so that they then can move on and be productive when they leave Wyndham High School. So they will not meet a credit requirement, and those would be the students who typically, when they're entering the high school, we're already looking at a 5-year or a 6-year program. At that point, they then become eligible for adult services. And so it would be allowing individuals to then participate with their cohort, who that's their particular circumstance. For a student who is in classes and are in credit-bearing classes, the IEP team would be working with the student to, first of all, look at what their sequence of classes are, but then also the accommodations and supports that would be put into those classes that would then help determine their level of proficiency. And in thinking of, let's go to consideration for special education students. If you look at main learning results and what is considered to be proficient, you really need to finish Algebra 2. There would be students in who may be who have an IEP, that the IEP to determine that they're not going to reach Algebra 2 by the time they finish Wyndham High School, but are determining, here's the level of math that we think that you're going to reach when you leave.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
I think so. So where I'm kind of getting at with that is, with some of those learners, graduation ceremony is more of an event. It's more of an accomplishment that person was able to go through the process of high school. And regardless of the fact that they may only end up working at, say, a McDonald's or, janitorial services or something like that, just the mere going through that process and being able to march, putting on a cap and gown, having their family take pictures. So the participation in graduation ceremony, would they still be eligible to at least maybe receive a certificate or something like, if we're not able to give them a diploma?
Yep.
So I'm just kind of curious, the way I'm kind of reading this right now, it looks like they are not eligible to participate in graduation.
No,
if
they are.
They are. Okay.
They are. So, and here's a piece that I probably should have mentioned. I apologize for not. When a student receives special education services, receives their diploma, legally special education services stop. Okay. And for a student that would be in the consideration of that participation, transitionally, in order for them to reach adult services, they're going to have to, that student would need to hit 20 in order to be eligible, but their cohort is graduating at 18. So this would allow that individual to still go through the ceremonies. They would receive a certificate of attendance or another certificate from Wyndham High School as part of that ceremony. And then, since they're not receiving an official diploma, they are then allowed to continue on with their services for an additional 2 years. Okay. To make sure. And you are absolutely right, graduation's a rite of passage. It's an opportunity. I know some families I've had the opportunity to work with. It is a big, big moment for the family to be able to have that. And for some families, not thinking that a student would ever reach that age of maturity. So it's an exciting thing to share as a community. The previous policy did not have provision for that to happen. But it's something that has happened. Okay. So this is allowing it to then, it's matching practice.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that, okay, so it's 4 years have gone by. They figured they're going to be there 5 or 6, hopefully, till you can get them to some point. So they go through the graduation ceremony, get whatever they get. Now, when they finish school, will they get a diploma?
If a student has met the graduation requirements,
Right.
they do.
Okay.
And we have done some of those ceremonies in my office during the summertime. Or in some cases where students do not earn a diploma, where they hit age 20 and they finish up their services, they leave and they go on to other programs. And additionally, I'll also add that we do have Wyndham High School students who do not finish their diploma requirements when the rest of the students do. They finish the summer, and again, we do a ceremony. Sometime we've had Mr. Prince come over and help out as well, and we do a ceremony in the office, invite family in, and do a cap and gown because a student has finished that. But unfortunately, we have this arbitrary moment in time, which I think is June 9th this year, where that needs to happen. Yep. So I'm going to invite my friend Christine up to help me with grading and reporting.
Oh, hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Any big announcement tonight?
Any big announcement? I have a change in position for next year.
You too.
Start it off.
Sure. So grading and reporting, again, we've been spending multiple years on this piece to make sure that we're clear and concise. And I think that Chris mentioned earlier, a lot of these pieces have been in practice, but they haven't been in our policies. And I think it's important for us to have these written out for community, for new administrators when they come in, to continue the good practice that has been done. So first of all, our grading policy is to ensure that all district educators will use the design system of grading to communicate student learning in a fair, accurate, and consistent manner. First of all is the guiding principles that students are, those are the standards that students are expected to demonstrate over the course of their K-12 education. They are scaffolded in all of our reporting all the way up through K-12. Last year, you heard from our committee how we worked really hard to make sure the language matched our K-2 learners, grades 3 to 5, 6 to 8, and then our 9 to 12. Being able to visit the students when they did their capstone this year was pretty exciting, and to hear the kids talk about that piece. I saw some of you there, and just having them understand, like, these are the pieces that you need to use forward in your life, it was a great example of that part. Do you want to do academic?
Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously the primary purpose of grading is a communication tool. And it's really to give parents, the educators, and the student an idea of how are you doing? How are you doing compared to standards? And how are you doing towards the expectation, whether it be a course or a class or a grade level, making sure that everyone is on the same page. And I think one of the board's terms for this year has been consistency. And what we've been working for and through this policy and with the A-team is to bring greater consistency across grading, and then also working through our curriculum work that Christine has so well led, looking at how do we bring consistency across curriculum. And if you think about that, curriculum should have similar assessments, which then should be communicated out in a similar way. And so looking at ways that we can best communicate that out to parents, how we can measure proficiency, and then showing progress towards guiding principles, academic content. And then another part, which I know as high school principal I had a chance to report out to you, but separating out habits of work, because what we want grades to represent is what a kid is, knows and is able to do, and not about how they do it. And specifically, I'll give you 3 great examples. Caleb, Aaron, Nate, they're my 3 kids. Caleb is neat as can be. Aaron is super scary. You walk in his room and you're afraid you'll never get out. And Nate's somewhere in between. All different learners, all can complete the same task, but in a grading system that includes habits of work, their neatness and whether or not a pizza was left in the backpack, or how neat or how messy something was, would be included as part of the grade. And really, grades are about communicating the learning. And so one of the things we've worked as staff across the district, and I know there's an exhibit that's on here, is making sure that we pull that out and that a grade truly reflects, can a kid do it or a kid can't do it. What we don't want is an inflated grade that because a kid colors well, or a kid is super sweet to the teacher, as much as we want that to happen, but can't do the work. We don't want their grade to be different from that. In addition, for the younger grades, we've agreed upon a 4-point proficiency level, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, and the reporting out on does not meet, partially meets, and then exceeds, and looking at that consistent across those grades. If we move on, I think this was a workshop that was done for the board very beginning of the year, looking at ways that we can bring some greater consistency across the middle schools, the 2 middle schools that we have, and to the high school. Because what we want from our students is that we don't want a big surprise that grading looks a little different, or that work expectations or remediation policies, all those things look the same. So this is one thing that the 3 schools worked on together, which is, again, the dual reporting system, using averaging so that grades are resetting in the quarters, reporting out in content areas where applicable, reported out by course for high school. And then the weighting piece here. This was new this year, and Ryan can maybe give us some feedback on how this has gone. Last year, previously, in all 3 buildings, a student's grade was simply based on the summative, so the tests, the major projects, and did not include the formative pieces. There was some thought by staff, and I know this was great faculty feedback, was that some of the homework and other pieces were beginning to slip because kids didn't necessarily see that it was as important, and so adding that formative piece in. And so I'm not sure if that's improved things, or I'm getting the head nod, so I'm going to say yes. Things have improved for that.
There's been feedback that has improved. I wasn't there last year, but I think there's been some improvement, and the freshman class in particular seems to be getting more of the formative material than we did last year.
Good.
So that in itself, given what we knew with some of the issues of the freshman class. Skipping down to habits of work, we just talked about that reported out separately. Retake policy, and I think this is one that's important to be key across all the buildings, is that it's a two-week period. Kids have the opportunity to reassess, but they know that they have 2 weeks to do it and that their informatives are important. Homework being that 10% part. Late work, because yes, kids do things late, completed within 2 weeks, and having some impact on a student's grade. Makeup work, course credit, eligibility. And there's an eligibility policy, and then looking at that one version for a report card format. Looking across the middle schools and the high school right now, we've been working with the A-team on grading platforms, trying to bring some greater consistency. That's still some future work that we want to bring to you, but looking at the upper grades, moving into IC so that parents have one platform that they're used to as they move through the middle years and into high school, knowing where to find grades and how to navigate all those different parts, because the last thing we want is a family to get to high school and not know how to access their students' grades at that point. I'm going to swap over to you for a minute. You want me to?
I got it. So we also have aligned the middle school, high school conversion scales, so it's very clear. This format we also are putting into policy. Kate brought that forward, which I think is perfect, because these are the questions we get an awful lot. So you see the conversion between the proficiency score and the 100-point score, and then the descriptions are laid out there for parents. Because what's the difference between is the thing that kids and parents want to know. And so both Ryan, Randy, Drew, Chris helped us out with this piece, putting all these parts down, even the part where we have insufficient evidence. And again, all of these are building up to what you just heard in the last policy of how was credit awarded, what is needed for that piece. But it's very clear of where students need to fall and where they are. And again, our community was, we had an evening this fall where community members were very happy to see this piece. They understand the power of standards and the 1 through 4, but also they need that 1 to 100 point scale, because it's what we have to bring our students out to. And I think Chris has always held true, and Ryan the same way. We're not going to do any harms to students. What is the best way we can support there? So we'll show a little bit more than we did in the past. And then, do this part?
Yep, go ahead.
No.
Oh, sorry. Habits of work. Habits of work we've already talked about. There's some examples that are there. Communicating the grading system. You know, this is something that we're working on, especially we have a policy. So making sure that this is appearing in handbooks and referencing to handbooks. And I think board leadership has already set August 7th to be reviewing handbooks. We met as an A-team Tuesday, and we'll have those ready for the end of July to make sure that they're on and ready so that parents know about that. High school graduation standards, there's a description that's there. Again, for a student to earn credit, they have to be at that minimal proficiency level, that lowest level, but they still need to be, still want them to be achieving higher. No question about it. The other thing that this also provides, and I'm just going to go here to the last part of the policy, looking at some consistent grade point averages and how those are recognized. This is something that we've done at graduation, I think for the last 5 years now. And you'll notice those of you who've been to graduation, you'll see different color honor stoles. So summa cum laude, we have kids that would wear, I think it's a robin's egg blue. And then the magna cum, we have kids that wear a black stole and then a gold stole. And I probably messed up 2 of those, but looking at those orders. And then we also made the conscious decision that we will continue to weight grades. And this in itself has increased, I think, probably our AP participation by about 400%. We went from about 80 exams to over 350 kids taking exams. Part of it due to the weight, part of the opportunities, and I know Ryan's continuing to expand that. And then looking at honors and college courses, providing some of that weight. I will say, and just so clear for the public, every high school weights their grades a little differently. And every college knows how every high school weights their grades, and basically every college takes our weighted grades and unweights them when they compare transcripts across. And every college knows how they do that. They have their own formulas that they use. But again, this is how we do, and we still recognize a top 10, and we still recognize a top 10%. And I know all of you have been invited to a top 10% banquet, which in this graduating class, which should be, what, 230 we're hoping for or so, would be the 23 students, and then again the top 10. And we've chosen to do that because, yes, there are still scholarships out there that look for kids, whether you're in the top 10%, top 20%, and again, making sure that kids have that opportunity.
Oh, just a quick question, because I can't remember. In policy, the athletic co-curricular, IGDJ, what was the eligibility for the high school? What was the grade?
They have to be passing all of their classes.
A 70?
7.
70, okay. If we go to page 3 of 6 in here, a 70 at the high school does not equal, at the middle school, they have to have a proficiency score of 2. So we're asking kids at the middle to school.
Not anymore.
What? Yeah. Right, Kate? Wasn't it 2? For the middle school, the policy, if I remember correctly?
For athletic,
But yeah,
I think it was 2.
it was 2. So we're asking, I'm just saying.
High school 70 used to be a 2, and there's been some changes that are along with that.
Yeah, so,
But
but that's a new policy, fairly new, that last year. So we're asking middle school to be a 2, but you only have to be a 70 at the high school. I'm just saying, somebody could say that is not apples to apples. Just something to look at. Just something to look at, that's all. Eric?
So this is going to be the same for middle school, this grading system, so that probably will be adjusted, because this is kind of a new equal playing field, so those coming out of 8th grade know what they're going into.
So last year at Wyndham High School, when we were under a proficiency-based model with the state, a 2 was required to earn credit, which was the 73.3.
Right.
And it was the initial eligibility for the freshman class, and for the upperclassmen who were not under a proficiency system at the time, they had the 70, and so we literally had to go class by class to look at eligibility with that. And so up until within a month ago, with a number of the things in proficiency being actually rolled back, students who had been at the middle level coming up to high school still would have had to have met a 2 in order to be basic proficient. So there's even been some changes in rollback in the state law.
So that would be good. They're going to aim higher, it's okay.
Anything else? Yep. Just out of curiosity with the weighted grades, it is one. I was thinking that too. How come college courses aren't up there with AP? Is that just what you're, and I'm not questioning the decision, I'm just wondering if that's.
There are some college courses that don't necessarily meet the same level of rigor as what an AP course would. And I don't know what the numbers are this year, and I'd have to defer to Ryan, but I think last year alone we had close to 75 kids who were at SMCC, St. Joe's, and USM taking their senior level English. some of those courses were more challenging than others. And so without being able to fully vet all of those, that's the reason.
And that was kind of my assumption.
Yep.
But they have to sit to take the AP exam. They don't need a certain score though.
Correct.
To get okay.
Correct, because another issue that happened in the past was that students would want to take a course for the weight, but yet they would not take the exam. And the exam is a wonderful opportunity for kids because kids often surprise themselves how well they can do on it. And you know, there are, at least the UMaine system will take 3 or greater, which is a significant savings for parents.
I will say American University took a couple too, so it stretches outside of
St. A's,
our
we
little,
have we have a friend who she's getting 9 credits.
Yeah,
Credits and
it's awesome.
But I personally appreciate that AP is weighted higher than the college courses, because I think a lot of times we're seeing students take these college classes to earn the credits and then they never end up even transferring. So that was my kind of like trick question.
Any Anybody else? Scott?
So, can I bring everybody's attention to the first page, under B3. The grading and reporting system will measure, report, and document student proficiency toward a set of clearly defined guiding principles and content area graduation standards developed by the administration, faculty, and staff of RSU 14. So here's my question. Personally, I have gone to parent-teacher conferences in the past, and I would ask, why did my child get this particular grade? And the response would be, well, that grade is reflecting on how much they have learned to date.
Right.
Out of what the curriculum is. And, okay, well, has she learned the rest of the curriculum? No, that's why the grade isn't higher. And a lot of parents get that same type of comment, especially, I don't know how it is in the higher grades, but in the earlier grades. You know, they'd be graded on content in the curriculum that they haven't actually been taught yet, and their grade is impacted because the teacher just hasn't gotten to that part of the curriculum yet. So as I read number 3 here, I'm kind of wondering, is that what that piece is?
So I'm
we
going to let Christine speak more K-8. I'll speak 9 to 12, where the graduation standards indicators are as you go along through the course, and that they build upon one another, eventually providing a set of data back to the graduation standards. In the case of Wyndham High School, which is a little different than some of the younger grades, where there is a traditional grade that's reported out, and then a standard grade which is reported out. You're getting both of those pieces, or both of those parts. So then all those different indicators that teachers are working on continue to build evidence, and so it's in time. So we learned this today, there's an assessment on it, it builds to that. It wouldn't be a set of year-long standards. And maybe Christine can talk about some of the work that's being done in math and writing to address.
Right, you'll see a shift in the math and writing because we have a set curriculum now, which is totally aligned with the assessment piece. What you're hearing is of staff that are covering year-long standards, and the students, they want to grade out exactly where the child is. So they're messaging out, well, this is where we want to get by the end of the year, but we haven't covered everything yet. So what they're trying to do is report to you of the learning in progress and not the stop in time learning. And that's a shift because you're going to see more 2s on a report card. And as parents, that's something like, well, what are they doing? They're not there yet. Well, they're not there yet because it's a year-long progression that they're trying to get to. So it's that balance in the early levels of actually reporting out where they are, but they haven't had enough mastery to get to the next level because that they build. So those are the conversations we're having at the younger grades, especially our K-2. They want to report out in very discrete targets, which makes it really difficult because it's like 140 for ELA and mathematics. And so we're really visiting that this year to say, how can we communicate clearly with parents without having
people in a panic that their child's not where they need to be. So the question I always ask with my children as well in a different district is, are they on track to where they need to be? Well, yes, they're on track, but we still have more work to do. That's the answer to that piece. So philosophically, it's really hard when you have people who want to report out at the end of the quarter and this is what they've done, or they're following the learner where the learner actually is. And so they're trying to give you the best picture of where their child is. For example, in writing, we send a letter out every year. We have really amped up the bar of where we want children to write because we know they need to be prepared. And a lot of kids are not getting the traditional 3 easily. It's a lot of work, and we break it down into the progressions, and it's truly showing where the child is and what they need to do next. And so it's one of the pieces where I think the first normal thing to do as a parent is you look and you're scanning. Do you see anything below a 3? And then you panic. And we have to remember that a 2 means that you're working on that skill, and that they're not there yet. And that's okay, because we're here for 175 days. So
I think it's a mind shift for the parents.
it is a mind
more than
shift for the
anything.
parents. And I think when they sit with their teacher, they understand where their child is, what the next steps are, and they keep going. Because we have these drop-dead dates of reporting home to parents, it's not going to be all covered. We don't teach in like a 16-week block for a trimester and everything stops and then we start all over new. We're continuing to learn as we go through. So, but you're right, it is a mind shift.
I think that we need to try and figure out a way to communicate this to parents.
Yep.
Because it's, a lot of parents are going to parent-teacher conferences and, you know, you only get 15 minutes with parent-teacher conferences. And when you have a bunch of 2s on a report card for a 4th grader or a 5th grader, you're using more than 15 minutes.
Right.
So we got to try and figure out a way to communicate this mind shift. So, well, thank you for explaining
You're
that.
welcome. Okay, you're welcome.
So would we, just to follow up on Scott's question, would we see a more accurate, or would parents see a more accurate grade at the end of the school year?
Yes.
Okay, so for example, if someone was, a student had kind of jumped ahead a reading grade level, but they're reporting it just as a 3, then would you see maybe a more accurate description? Okay.
You would, because again, if you've gone and exceeded over where you are, and I think one of the most, I understand where you're coming from, Scott, because it's that horrible feeling. And my 6th grader came home once and she had a 2 in something, and I said, "Oh, what's going on there?" She goes, "Oh, Mom, we're fine. We haven't even got to that piece of the standard, and you know what? It's okay. It's just a number. But I bet in about 3 weeks when we go through it, I'm going to be fine." So again, it's we as adults panic when we see those things.
Talk to my kid.
Yeah, and it's like, but what's the purpose of grading and reporting? It's very different than when we all went to school. And it shifts more traditionally when we get to middle school, high school. We're trying to meet that world, but in your K to 5, we're trying to really tell you where your child is. It doesn't do any of us any good to keep putting 3s down if your child's truly not there. We're seeing that bubble, and that's really hard to sit with a parent and say, but they got 3s all the way through, but they clearly are not there when they hit the high school. Like, it's clearly they're not proficient in what they're doing, and that's devastating. So we need to be honest with where your child is so they know what they need to do next, and they work with their teacher. So.
Also on that, and I haven't looked at one in a little while, but in the lower grades, okay, you have the marks there, you know how it goes down, I've noticed that there's a lot of inconsistencies. You have some teachers, they fill out the top one, they fill out the mark and whatever, and then they fill out some of the bullets, and then you have some that fill out all of them down below. They give them a grade in everything, all the subsections, and some teachers don't. Are we going to have more consistency on how the teachers fill those out? You either fill it all.
If they haven't, if you have not put a score in something, it doesn't show on your report card. So depending on the classroom, if they've covered standards in, for example, social studies, and a teacher pulled a few in, you're going to have more than someone else who just did the social studies standard. So we are trying, in math and in writing, those are all clear and consistent, even with scope and sequence of when grades need to be in. So it's that autonomy that a teacher also has when they're putting in grades. But we are working towards the alignment. And that's the piece that we're working at. I mean, you've been with us for 2 years on this math implementation. I just unrolled to the A team. Here are the standards and PIs, K through 8, that I am suggesting that we give to the committee and that we use next year, so we are consistent across, meaning that a 3rd grade geometry unit has the same evidence whether you're in Wyndham or whether you're in Raymond. You only can do that when you do a huge implementation, and we've done it in writing, and we're doing it in mathematics, and then we keep moving. So
Great, thank you.
Hi,
Hi.
Christine. So with that grade being a year-long standard, in jump rope, there's places for teachers to put comments.
Yes.
Some teachers do, some teachers
Yeah.
don't. And when they're doing the classwork up to that point, even though it's not a year-long standard, they've had assessments or whatever, and those are graded 3, 3.5, 2, whatever. So it should be able to come up with an average to put in that section that says currently Susie's at, a 3. Yes, it shows a 2, but we're not finished yet.
Right.
But currently to this day, that helps the
Yes.
father say, okay,
Right.
I understand it.
Right. Again, it's communication.
Right.
It's,
So
and they
with
have an
that, the
opportunity.
consistency, how do we know, how do we encourage the teachers to take the time to fill out those particular comments on that? Because I've seen in my small little world, I saw maybe 33% take advantage of that.
Yeah. I think that we, as an administrative team, can bring that to our principals and say this is a request that we have from the board. We'd like to see more consistency in comments. It's important, especially with a 15-minute conference, that you
Right.
can't cover everything. And do those pieces. We encourage that. I mean, it's comes down to that piece, but I think it's a good piece where we're having this in front of you as grading and reporting. We've done a lot of work with middle
Right.
school, high school, that teachers know now, we've been working for a full year, that we're doing this math implementation, so we are aligned, so that you're not having to create everything. You're not curriculum writers. You are the deliverers of this work with your instructional strategies. So,
One quick one about the systems. So we've got Infinite Campus, we've got Jump Rope. Infinite Campus, in my 1 year of doing it, I love compared to Jump Rope. Any thoughts of?
From your lips to God's ears.
Mr. Howell.
I saw him smile like, okay.
So we are in the process of limiting the number of platforms. There's also one that you didn't include on there, which is Illuminate, which is...
I forgot.
Nope. And Illuminate is a very robust product that Mike Pelletier, who is one of our tech people in the district, created, working with the primary school, to help be able to move students flexibly across different buildings. And so we are in the process, working the A team, is how can we use Illuminate at all the younger grades to come to a consistent platform for kids and for families. And then Infinite Campus is one that looking at for the middle and secondary to be able to be consistent. Because again, we want parents to be in, we want them to have their passwords,
Right.
we want to be as transparent as possible so that that people know where kids are at. Because ultimately it goes back to the purpose of grading reporting is to communicate out and make sure that people have accurate on-time
Right.
information. And the other part which we didn't talk about is also working with staff members to make sure that their grades are as up to date as possible, so that you don't see grade binging or grade dumping, so that you see swings, because we want to keep parents as informed as possible. And sometimes that's easy, and sometimes it's hard to do that.
I've loved Infinite Campus. Because I work behind a computer, and I can pull it up and I can scroll through it. And if I see something missed, I snapshot it. I text it to my son while he's in school and say, "Don't come home without an answer." It's an awesome tool.
I think we might be cut from the same cloth.
I do want to say, though, it probably sounds as an outsider community like, why aren't they just all in one? Please know whenever we transition to a system, staff needs to learn that system.
Right.
We have this, I mean, our heart and soul has been this big math implementation. That is the one piece that's holding us back, especially K-5, before making a big decision, because of the amount that they're going to be doing next year. So just bear with us and be patient. We're really trying to respect the teachers in those classrooms who also have another added on mandatory training next year. So we're trying to fit all these pieces in. So.
And the other part overcoming is that as slick as Infinite Campus looked, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen in the background for things to have to be loaded, and even moving that to the younger grades, which have not traditionally done a schedule where you have everyone parsed out for every single minute. Take some time on the back end to actually make all those things happen and come up to speed. And in some cases, one of the things we've talked about A-Team, and we're way past budget, but you know, how do we get the resources to help some of the younger grades get some of these things done in the background? Because unlike high school and middle school administrators who are in Infinite Campus every single day and working in the background, it's just not a piece they've had the experience with. So we're trying to be mindful of that. But again, the policy, the reason we brought the two policies together tonight is that graduation and grading reporting go hand in hand. And we want to make sure that our community not only knows how our kids are achieving, but how those achievements then lend themselves into credits. And then ultimately, after 13 years here in RSU 14, that they're either graduating from Wyndham High School, or for those kids who have choice, graduating from another high school, and that they're fully prepared to go on to the next step, and that our policy's helping them out with that.
So just the last piece, because we have the illuminated jump rope, I see some both standards, everything is absolutely similar in both of those systems. So there aren't different standards for RES and different ones for Wyndham Primary. I put them in both systems. So they're consistent. They just look different when they report out. So that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will have 2 more readings of this.
We'll talk about it tomorrow to make that one change, and then
Okay.
we'll have the first and second.
Okay. All right, I'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Yeah, I want to say,